Testing. Whoa. 1, 2, 3. Can everyone hear me? That worked. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, my name is Arzu Geybulla, and I am a member of the Program Council at the Forum 2000 Foundation. On behalf of Forum 2000, Executive Director Jakub Klepal, and the Foundation's Board of Directors, it is my honor to welcome you to the 27th Forum 2000 Conference. The world we live in has been subject to tectonic shifts since 1997, when Forum 2000 took place for the first time here in Prague, spearheaded at the time by President Václav Havel. Since our last gathering here a year ago, there have been very few victories for democracies. As was the case last year, this year too, we meet in a time of wars and democratic backsliding, which continue to challenge principal values of freedoms and democracies across the world. We're outstretched and outsourced, while those in the shadows keep creeping in. Institutions holding the values that we here stand for are being compromised, whether through dark money, corruption, or other means. Fear and intimidation, the use of surveillance technology, and impunity are infecting the world. But, as in the slightly edited version of icon Maya Angelou's words, still we rise. This brings me to this year's theme at the Forum 2000, for a democratic world order. Over the next 2 days, participants, speakers, and moderators will address various pressing issues and topics. By now, you should have all received an invitation to sign up for the program schedule on an application called Shed. Those who have done so, it is a packed agenda categorized by several main themes, as you will see. The discussion will start tomorrow at the Congress Center, here where we are today. As has been the case in the past forums, there are public sessions streamed online and sessions that will only be available to participants of the forum here in Prague. While I look forward to hearing what solutions and strategies we are here to discuss, I wonder about one question. How do we get ahead instead of constantly putting out fires after they've begun? How do we prevent fires altogether? And if not, what are we doing wrong? Okay, I admit that is actually 3 questions. And before I introduce the speakers of the opening act, allow me to also thank the partners of Forum 2000 who made this conference possible. The Czech Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the National Endowment for Democracy, the International Visegrad Fund, the Robert Bosch Foundation, and many, many others. I would also like to thank the Forum 2000 team, namely Jakub Klepal, Susanna Blahutova, Lobos Fabo, I hope I pronounced all of those names correctly, and their colleagues who rolled up their sleeves shortly after we wrapped up last year's forum and started planning the forum's 27th edition. As for this evening, we have 2 speakers and a music performance by an Iranian band. So, with no further ado, allow me to welcome the first speaker, the Mayor of Prague, Bohuslav Svoboda, to kick this year's edition of Forum 2000 with his welcoming remarks.
Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, it's a great honor to have the opportunity to speak at this prestigious event which has gained a lot of respect and reputation among all the seers of its duration. The motto of this conference is "For a World Democratic Order," which already incorporates a hidden message. First of all, we acknowledge that democracy is not ruling the world, as a significant part of the world population still lives of unfree and undemocratic condition. Secondly, it is clear that the motto also implies that we strive for the spread of democratic principles in these non-democratic areas. As Winston Churchill once said, "No one pretends that democracy is project or all-wise. Indeed, it has been said that democracy is the worst form of government except for all those other forms that have been tried from time to time." In short, even democracy has its own imperfection. However, we have not yet devised a better way of governing. Additionally, it is necessary to understand that democracy does not always ensure freedom. Both of these values usually go hand in hand, but they can sometimes be secluded, or in more extreme cases, they may even exist independently, separated from each other. Therefore, it is essential to support the value of democracy, but not forcefully demand it. Let's not forget about civil liberties, which are creating the basis of freedom and are also being part of free and democratic society. For instance, I am convinced that we should not unnecessarily restrict the freedom of speech in the name of excessive political correctness. I have spent a considerable part of my life living in a society that was not free. So the less freedom there was, the more I appreciate the democracy I live in now. We shall value real liberal democracy and support countries that are interested in implementing this principle of liberal democracy in their own societies. It would be remarkable if participation from countries where democracy has not yet fully taken root would convey this message on their homelands. Great things are often achieved through small steps. To quote the former president of Czechoslovakia, Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk, who has played a major role in strategy the value of democracy. Please, let's keep that in mind. It is a timeless concept, acceptable 100 years ago and still acceptable today. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mayor Svoboda. Our next speaker of the evening is author of many books, including The Spirit of Democracy, Senior Fellow at Hoover Institution and Stanford University, Larry Diamond. Join me in welcoming Larry to hear his thoughts on present-day challenges and what the future of democracy looks like given the current trends. Thank you.
Well, first, Mr. Mayor, thank you for those very inspiring remarks and for your specific embrace of freedom of speech under difficult challenges. It's a message we all need to reaffirm right now. And greetings to all of you. It is very comforting to be among so many people committed to democracy and struggling to defend and advance it in perilous times. I want to thank Forum 2000 and in particular Jakub Klepal for bringing us together and for giving me the honor of helping to frame why we are here and what we face. Since this is my first time at this annual gathering, I would like to recall the example of Václav Havel, who devoted his life and art to struggling for freedom, in part by insisting that we live in truth. We have some hard truths that we've already heard that we need to face these days. We can only confront them successfully if we do so together in strong, resolute, and creative collaboration. The title of our conference could not better define what must be our common purpose for a democratic world order. If modern world history teaches us anything, it is that the cause of freedom is indivisible. Democracy cannot be secure anywhere in the world when it faces powerful authoritarian states that deny its legitimacy, repress the rights of their own people, censor free flows of information, promote the virtues of unaccountable power, and propagate disinformation and untruth. Deeply authoritarian regimes cannot live in benign coexistence with democracies. For repressive autocracies face a fundamental legitimacy dilemma. Superficially, they seem secure because they do not depend on popular consent. All they really need is adequate resources to maintain state control over the population, and thus to pay the agents of state repressive power, information management, and civil administration that perpetuate their control. Think North Korea at the extreme, or Myanmar, or many other cases. If they have oil or natural resources to sustain them, even better. They can be as brutal and predatory as they care to. Think Venezuela and Iran. Or if they have massive markets that the companies and governments of liberal democracies want access to, they think they can rule forever. Think China. But because they do not establish and renew their mandate to rule organically through the free competition of parties, candidates, and ideas, authoritarian regimes are deeply vulnerable to a crisis of legitimacy, to the slow, rotting creep of cynicism and detachment experienced by the regimes in Central and Eastern Europe, and then by the Soviet Union, and hence to sudden eruptions of discontent and disgust, and even sudden death. This is the great fear that haunts all dictatorships, that they will lose their grip and fall. For them, falling does not mean a temporary loss of power, it means losing everything and forever. This is why they feel so profoundly threatened by free flows of information, independent research and writing, and by critical inquiry and alternative ideas in education and the arts. It is why they must dominate the information sphere and control the realm of ideas. And it is why, if they cannot instill sincere devotion to the ruling party or clique and to the paramount leader himself, they must at least generate fear, hatred, and resignation. Fear of the other, of some readily demonized minority, the Roma, the Jews, the Muslims, the immigrants, the LGBTQ community, the other in whatever form, is indispensable to autocrats. If all they have to offer is a record of economic performance, that can be and usually is fleeting. When they cease to produce improvements in people's lives, people ask, "What have you done for us lately?" And then people will no longer concede to the bargain, "Okay, we'll give up our freedom in exchange for development." If you are the Ayatollahs in Iran, Putin in Russia, or the inheritors of other bankrupt autocracies in North Korea, Burma, Venezuela, Zimbabwe, and so many other places, and now as growth fades and capital seeks to flee, if you are Xi Jinping in China, you must wield the indispensable weapon of dictatorship, fear. Fear of uncertainty, fear of dangerous minorities from within, fear of enemies without. With fear goes aggressive, xenophobic nationalism and hatred. If you cannot offer your people real progress and a life of dignity, you tell them to draw hope and validation from aggressive nationalism, from the greatness of the national project. You promote glorious nationalist goals, the reunification of the motherland, the conquest of supposedly lost territory, the will to regional or global power, dominance over lesser, weaker nations. You say to your citizens, we will be powerful because your nation is powerful. You will rise because your nation has risen. It is an old and ugly story, the lesson of countless needless wars. It is this fundamental and ancient truth that we confront today in the most important challenges to world peace: Russia's brutal and entirely unprovoked wars against Ukraine, the terrorist aggression that Hamas launched against Israel on October 7th, a war of nihilistic and racist rage by a criminal organization masquerading as a state, which has nothing to offer its people except hatred, death, and destruction. The Hamas aggression is backed, armed, and encouraged by a primeval theocratic dictatorship in Iran, which faces a mounting legitimacy crisis of its own. And if you are Xi Jinping, sitting atop a shrinking population, a stalling economy, and a bullied and subjugated business class that wants to exit, and your ideology of control and your ambition for historical greatness are at stake, you wage a campaign of cyber, political, economic, and incremental military aggression against Taiwan, with the goal and the plan of escalating someday to all-out war to conquer the island, one of the world's most vibrant democracies. As during the Cold War, freedom and dictatorship are pitted against one another now in an existential, interconnected, and increasingly global struggle. Two of these confrontations now involve actual warfare. The third could break out at any time. As Democrats, we do not seek, much less glorify, war or any form of violence. But the first principle for understanding the current era of profound danger, an era that became massively more dangerous on February 24th of last year when Putin's army invaded Ukraine, is that power matters. And I'm beginning here with the most fundamental and tragic element of power, the ability to mobilize and repel violence. By definition, if democracies are overrun and conquered by aggressive autocracies, there will be less democracy. But there is a deeper truth captured by what international relations theorists call the bandwagon effect, and in a different way by the German term Zeitgeist, the spirit of the times. If democracies are weak and irresolute and then militarily defeated, if they cower and prevaricate in the face of blatant authoritarian aggression, it will not just be the defeated democracies we lose. Many other states and societies will throw in their lot with the authoritarian juggernaut. They will seek to placate and defer to it, at least to buy protection. Or they will seek to model themselves after powerful autocracies who they see as the new embodiment of strength and success. This is certainly a very old and painfully familiar story on this continent. In a world without rules, power rules, and you line up behind the powerful. Incredibly, some of the governments, business people, intellectuals, and what we now call influencers who seek to placate, justify, indulge, or even celebrate rising authoritarian powers come from the world's democracies. Like the fascist and communist collaborators of the previous century, they are ready to betray democracy out of sympathy with a new, more muscular ideology and form of power. Or they simply want to go with a winner. This is the most important thing we can say tonight. Democracy cannot be weak. It cannot afford to lose on the battlefield. This is why it remains so vital for the future of freedom globally that Ukraine win the war, regain its territory, and defeat Russia's aggression. It is why Hamas must be defeated and disabled as a terrorist organization while remaining sensitive to the rights of innocent Palestinians. And it is why the democracies of North America, Europe, and Asia must clearly signal their intent to help Taiwan defend itself if it is attacked without provocation. Neither can democracy afford to lose at the negotiating table, or in the UN General Assembly, or on the debate stage, or in the race to develop new technologies, or in the classrooms, and most of all, the social media platforms that are shaping what people think and believe. To prevail, democracy cannot afford to be divided, and Democrats in politics and civil society must not fail to unite in the cause of recognizing, confronting, and repelling authoritarian efforts to reshape the world order. Make no mistake about it, our authoritarian adversaries are not simply ambitious and on the offensive, militarily, geopolitically, and ideologically. They are also, this is potentially the good news, deeply anxious. The good news is they're deeply anxious for a very good reason. We Democrats of various parties, ideologies, and cultures have a common positive agenda to offer people: the opportunity to live in dignity, truth, and the limitless creative possibilities of human freedom. The chance to protect freedom, correct governance failures, and improve societies through the institutional formula unique to democracy: free and fair competition for power, inclusive participation, open flows of information, restraint of power, and a rule of law. Dictatorships have only the grim, degrading bargain: give up your freedom, and we will give you order, and maybe for a time, prosperity. And authoritarian regimes know something else. Their people do not want or will not indefinitely accept that bargain. The people of Burma do not want that bargain. It is why the military is having to go to war against its own people to survive. The people of Iran do not want that bargain. It is why still, 13 months after the 22-year-old Mahsa Amini was brutally beaten to death by the Ayatollah's morality police, even after over 500 Iranians have died and 20,000 have been arrested in protests, courageous civil resistance continues. And why the Nobel Peace Prize Committee awarded one of the most important leaders of this struggle, Narges Mohammadi, its prize this year for her extraordinary courage and insistence on living in truth. The people of Venezuela do not want that bargain. It is why 7 million of them, 1/4 of the population, have fled the country in the last 8 years. The people of Africa do not want that bargain. It is why, even with all of the challenges and disappointments of multi-party politics, 3/4 of Africans have told the Afrobarometer pollsters in the last 2 years that they want to choose the leaders of their country through regular, open, and honest elections. Why 80% of Africans, on average, reject the options of one-man rule and one-party rule, and why, in largely poor countries in Africa, hungry for development, 61% of the public say it is more important for citizens to be able to hold government accountable, even if that means it makes decisions more slowly. And most certainly, the people of Ukraine do not want that bargain. It is why they are enduring enormous sacrifices to defend their sovereignty and democracy against Russian aggression. I have spoken about power. I want to conclude with legitimacy. Power and legitimacy are two sides of one story that determines who rules. The more an actor can mobilize power, the less it needs legitimacy, and vice versa. But political legitimacy, the belief in the moral rightness of a cause or a system of government, is also a form of power. And Václav Havel understood that to deny a regime legitimacy, to live in truth and deny it cooperation, even in mundane ways, is a form of power, the power of the powerless. Exerting the power of the powerless helped to pave the way for the fall of dictatorships in this part of the world and others during the exhilarating phase of democratic expansion in the 1980s and early 90s. At that time, power and legitimacy were converging to support movements for freedom around the world. The global zeitgeist embraced the ideals of freedom and accountability and the promise of prosperity and good governance that seemed to go along with democracy. It has not worked out entirely as we had hoped. Too many democracies were diminished by corruption, poor governance, economic reversals, rising inequality, and surging disinformation and division. There followed populist backlashes, and in many cases, soft or hard reversions to non-democracy. We need to be clear-eyed about what is happening. Democracy is in a serious and protracted democratic recession. It isn't just low-income African countries having military coups. It is the backsliding of rich democracies inside the European Union, the US, and elsewhere, and some, like Hungary, ceasing to permit the minimally level playing field required for democracy. Now the world's largest democracy, India, is sliding far down the path of authoritarian populism, accelerated, as it often is elsewhere, by the politics of religious bigotry and escalating intimidation of critics and the media. We are not just losing ground to bullying and aggressive autocracies and to would-be autocrats in democratic clothing. We are losing the global battle for the legitimacy of democracy. It's astonishing because democracy is intrinsically, and we can demonstrate this statistically, the best form of government. But while powerful authoritarian regimes have waged muscular, technologically adroit, multidimensional assaults on the ideas and values of democracy, and on the narratives about the relative performance of democracies versus autocracies, we have retreated from the ideological struggle. It is not the people of Burma, Belarus, or Venezuela who have retreated. Not the people of Thailand who have just had a democratic election victory robbed from them by a cynical alliance of the military, the power elite, and party opportunists. Not the brave journalists of Russia and Belarus carrying on the struggle to report and publish the truth in exile. Not the leader of Tunisia's Muslim Democratic Party, Rashid Ghannouchi, who is entering his 7th month as a political prisoner for the crime of insisting that President Kais Saied restore democracy. Not the Democratic newspaper publisher Jimmy Lai, who returned to Hong Kong several years ago, already past 70 years old and an extremely wealthy man, knowing that he faced the prospect of indefinite imprisonment, but unwilling to abandon his fellow journalists and the cause of freedom in Hong Kong. Not Alexei Navalny or Vladimir Kara-Murza, who returned to Russia facing nearly certain imprisonment to defy and resist Putin's decadent dictatorship, and most certainly not Narges Mohammadi. It is not they who have retreated from the struggle, but the supposedly wealthy and resourceful democracies, I'm sorry to say, not least the United States. We simply are not waging the ideological struggle, the normative struggle, the informational struggle for democracy and freedom with the energy, resources, conviction, coordination, and technological ingenuity of which we are capable and which the times demand. That is the challenge we must carry back to our own democracies. We must get serious about teaching and diffusing the values, experiences, requirements, and institutional designs of democracy. And we must do so on a scale with the scope and ease of access in many different languages that is required. We must get more serious about countering authoritarian disinformation and influence efforts, exposing its lies and self-serving purposes. We must provide democratic movements and publications with the technology and resources to report the news, educate for democracy, and counter authoritarian propaganda. If we want to restore momentum toward a democratic world order, we must demonstrate that democracy, with freedom and a rule of law, is a morally and practically superior form of government, and indeed the only form of government that has assured human dignity, peace, and prosperity. It is not hard to make this case because it is true, but it requires resources and imagination. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry, for your insights. I tried to take notes. There were so many things I couldn't. Thank you. This was really valuable and I think really important for the opening ahead of the 2 days of discussions that we're here to have. Our next guest is an Iranian band, Shahab Tolouie, who will perform 3 songs for us tonight. Pasokh, which in Persian means the answer. Noruz Vaesh, meaning like a new year, and When Gandhi Flew, a song dedicated to Gandhi and his vision for humanity. Please join me and welcome them on stage.
everybody. My name is Shahab Tolouie. I am from Iran. I was born by the Caspian Sea, by the northern part of Iran. My life journey, actually the music, the guitar, took me from this beautiful country across many countries to the Iberian Peninsula, to Spain, where I was fall in love with the flamenco music. And I just found myself actually in Spain. I started combining this music, a fusion of music that we call it today ethno-flamenco or Persian flamenco fusion. But there are many elements of this, different types of music. You will hear a lot of Persian, Arabic, North African, Jewish, Sephardic, and also Spanish music in it. So we call it ethno-flamenco with my brothers, Peter Hader on drum set, and Gavrilo Alexic on drum and on bass guitar. So we play 3 songs for you, not to take much of your time, but I just wanted to add a few sentences before that. Being born in Iran in a period which I grew up in a wartime, and music was literally any type of Western music was banned over there. So my father came home when everybody was thinking about how to keep their children alive. One day he came home with a guitar. And because of that guitar, today I live in freedom. I have friends from all around the world, and I can enjoy a borderless, basically, life. I think the effect of culture is very, very important. We have to think about it, how culture has importance in our lives. So the first song is dedicated to Gandhi. It's an instrumental piece. It's dedicated to the moment he's been shot. So people who maybe know this record, they know that this song starts with a gunshot. And just to communicate better with the piece, it's an instrumental piece. It starts with a major scale. Basically, he's flying away. And then in the middle part, you will hear a chaos. It's us. We know the chaos very well. Then after that is a funeral. And then after that, you know, the life goes on with that major scale. And the second and third song, as the beautiful moderator just said about it, is called The Answer. There are 3 songs that we dedicated to the people of Iran and their rightful demand for freedom. So, When Gandhi Flew. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
داری چه باز می شود تو در برابرم شدی گذشته یاد می شود تو هم برادرم شدی به دست تو تفنگ من به گوش من پیام تو زخون جوان میزند حدیث انتقام تو داری چه باز می شود تو در برابرم شدی گذشته یاد می شود تو هم برادرم شدی
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you. So the last song is called Nowruz Vash, like a new year. So let's hope for a new day, for a better day for everybody. I think everybody deserves freedom. So let's hope for a better day for everybody else. Thank you very much. Thank you to you all.
شب هی قوطه میریم هی کم میاریم آروم میگیریم دوباره از نو بلند میشیم روزانوهامون ما راه میریم گرفتن از ما اگه هوا رو گلوله بستن چشمای ما رو حال اسیران نوروز وش کن تقویم ماتم صد پاره اشکان چشم پیروز پر کن ز نوروز تاریخ زنسوز گرفتن از ما اگه هوا رو گلوله بستن چشمای ما رو حال اسیران نوروز فش کن تقویم ماتم صد پاره اشکان حال اسیران نوروز فش کن تقویم ماتم صد پاره اشکان.
Thank you very much indeed. It's been a pleasure to be amongst you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks also to Colin for the sound and the organizers for inviting us. Thank you very much indeed.
I guess I don't really need a podium at this point. Thank you. This was wonderful, very meaningful. Well, we just arrived at the last part of tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, join us, join each other at the reception. I would like to share a few reminders. The first Night Owl session of the forum is happening tonight at Carinthia Hotel at 9:30. On the social media and its double-edged sword. I did hear there will be wine, so there you go. And yes, please be here tomorrow. We have 2 full days, really interesting discussions. I'm really looking forward to that, and thank you.